My mother-in-law whispered, "That's not your child," while holding my newborn in the hospital nursery. I heard the words through the glass partition, my hand frozen on the door handle. Eleanor Hastings stood with her back to me, cradling my daughter against her expensive silk blouse, speaking in a voice I'd never heard her use before. Low and venomous, meant only for the baby's ears. My wife Natalie was still in recovery from the emergency C-section, drugged and exhausted, sleeping in a room down the hall. I'd left her there 30 minutes ago to check on our daughter in the nursery, to take photos to show Natalie when she woke. Eleanor had insisted on coming with me, said she wanted her first moment with her granddaughter to be special. Now I understood why. "Your real mother wouldn't have wanted you," Eleanor continued, adjusting the pink blanket around my daughter's face. "She threw you away like garbage, but we'll make sure you never find out where you really came from." My blood turned to ice. I must have made a sound, because Eleanor spun around, her eyes widening when she saw me. The mask dropped back into place instantly, her face transforming into that practiced smile I'd seen her use at country club luncheons and charity galas. "Andrew, darling, I was just telling little Grace how beautiful she is. Isn't she perfect?" Her voice was honey now, warm and grandmotherly. But I'd heard what she said. Every word was seared into my brain like a brand. I stepped into the nursery, closing the door behind me with deliberate care. "What did you just say to my daughter?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Eleanor's smile never wavered. "I said she's beautiful, which she is. Look at those tiny fingers." She held Grace toward me, but I didn't take her. Couldn't take her. My hands were shaking too badly. "Before that, you said something about her real mother, about throwing her away." Eleanor's expression flickered. Just for a second, I saw calculation behind her eyes. Then she laughed, light and dismissive. "Andrew, you must have misheard. The exhaustion of new fatherhood playing tricks on your ears. I would never say something so horrible." But I hadn't misheard. The words were too specific, too clear. "Give me my daughter." I reached for Grace, and Eleanor pulled back slightly. A protective gesture that looked maternal but felt possessive. "I think you need some rest, Andrew. You've been up for almost 30 hours. Why don't you go check on Natalie? I'll stay here with Grace for a bit. Give you time to collect yourself." She was trying to gaslight me. In a hospital nursery, holding my newborn daughter, Eleanor was trying to convince me I'd imagined what I'd clearly heard. I stepped closer, and this time, I didn't ask. I took Grace from her arms, cradling my daughter against my chest. She was so small, barely 6 pounds, born 3 weeks early because of complications we still didn't fully understand. "Get out," I said quietly. Eleanor's mask slipped again. Her mouth tightened into a thin line, her eyes going cold. "You're being irrational. I came here to support my daughter and meet my granddaughter. This is completely inappropriate." She was doing it again, turning it around, making me the problem. It was a move I'd seen her use on Natalie countless times over the 8 years we'd been together. The way she'd undermine Natalie's feelings, rewrite history, make her daughter doubt her own reality. I'd watched it happen so often that I'd learned to recognize the pattern. But I'd never had it directed at me before, never felt the full force of Eleanor's manipulation aimed at my throat. I said, "Get out, now, or I'll call security." Eleanor drew herself up to her full height, which was considerable in her designer heels. "I'll be speaking to Natalie about this. She'll be very disappointed in how you're treating her mother." She swept past me, trailing expensive perfume and barely contained rage. The door clicked shut behind her, and I was alone with Grace. She was sleeping peacefully, oblivious to everything that had just happened. I looked down at her face, at the tiny nose and the wisp of dark hair curling against her forehead, and felt the world tilt sideways. What had Eleanor meant? What real mother? What did she know about my daughter that I didn't? My mind raced through the past 9 months. Natalie's pregnancy had been difficult from the start. She'd been sick constantly, hospitalized twice for severe dehydration. The doctors had monitored her closely, warning us about potential complications. And Eleanor had been there through all of it, attending every appointment, taking notes, asking questions the doctors seemed impressed by. I'd thought she was being a supportive mother. Now I wondered what else she'd been doing. I needed to talk to Natalie. But when I returned to her recovery room, Eleanor was already there, perched on the edge of the bed, holding Natalie's hand. My wife was awake but groggy, her eyes unfocused from the medication. "There you are," Eleanor said brightly. "I was just telling Natalie how worried I am about you. You seem very stressed, Andrew. Maybe you should go home and get some real sleep. I can stay here with Natalie and the baby." Natalie blinked slowly, trying to focus on my face. "Are you okay?" Her words were slurred, her grip on consciousness tenuous. I wanted to tell her everything, to ask her what was going on, but she was in no state for this conversation, and Eleanor knew it. She'd timed this perfectly, catching Natalie when she was most vulnerable. "I'm fine," I said, sitting down on the opposite side of the bed from Eleanor. "Just tired. How are you feeling?" "Hurts," Natalie mumbled, "but I want to see her. Want to see Grace." I'd left Grace back in the nursery, in her bassinet, safe behind locked doors and watchful nurses. "She's sleeping. I'll bring her in soon." Eleanor stood up, smoothing her skirt. "I should let you two have some time together. Andrew, walk me out?" It wasn't a request. She was already moving toward the door, expecting me to follow. I looked at Natalie, but her eyes were closing again, dragged back under by the medication. I followed Eleanor into the hallway. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. She walked until we reached a quiet alcove near the elevators, away from the nurse's station and other visitors. "Let's be clear about something," Eleanor said, her voice dropping to that same low tone I'd heard in the nursery. "You will not tell Natalie about your little misunderstanding earlier. She's been through enough without you adding paranoid delusions to her recovery." I stepped closer to her, matching her tone. "It wasn't a misunderstanding. You said that Grace isn't my child, that her real mother threw her away. So I'm going to ask you one time, what the hell did you mean?" Eleanor's face remained perfectly composed, but I saw her fingers tighten around the strap of her designer handbag. "You must have misheard me, Andrew. The acoustics in that nursery are terrible. I was probably talking about some news story I'd heard, about abandoned babies. You know how my mind wanders." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost doubted myself. Almost. "Then you won't mind if I ask the hospital to pull the security footage from the nursery. I'm sure they have cameras in there for safety." Eleanor's expression froze. It was just a flash, barely a second, but I saw fear cross her face before she locked it down. "That seems excessive. Are you really going to make a scene over nothing? Embarrass Natalie like that? She doesn't need this stress right now." She was deflecting again, turning my concerns into attacks on Natalie. "If you're telling the truth, then the footage will confirm it. Either way, I need to know what's going on with my daughter." Eleanor stared at me for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, the social mask completely gone. "You don't want to go digging into this, Andrew. Trust me, some things are better left buried." She pressed the elevator button, and the doors opened immediately, like they'd been waiting for her. She stepped inside and turned to face me, her hand on the door to keep it from closing. "Think very carefully about what you do next. Think about Natalie. Think about your marriage. Think about whether you really want to know the truth." The doors slid shut, leaving me standing alone in the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. I went back to check on Grace first. She was still sleeping, her tiny chest rising and falling with steady breaths. A nurse was doing rounds, checking monitors and adjusting blankets. "Everything okay?" she asked, noticing my expression. I hesitated. What was I supposed to say? My mother-in-law said something cryptic about my daughter not being mine. It sounded insane, even in my head. "Just worried," I said finally. "First-time dad nerves." The nurse smiled sympathetically. "Completely normal. Your daughter is perfectly healthy, Mr. Hastings. All her vitals are strong. You have nothing to worry about." But I did have something to worry about. I just didn't know what yet. I spent the rest of that day in a fog of confusion and exhaustion. Natalie slept most of the time, waking only to try nursing Grace with help from the lactation consultant. She was in pain and overwhelmed, exactly as Eleanor had predicted. I couldn't add to her burden. Not yet. Not until I knew what I was dealing with. That night, after Natalie and Grace were both sleeping, I went to the hospital's security office. I explained that I needed to review footage from the nursery, that there had been an incident I needed to verify. The security guard looked skeptical. "What kind of incident?" I stumbled over my words, trying to make it sound reasonable. "My mother-in-law said something concerning. I just need to confirm what she said." "Is this a safety issue? Did she threaten the baby?" The guard was taking me seriously now, his hand moving toward his phone. "No," I said quickly. "Nothing like that. It was just confusing. I need to understand what she meant." The guard relaxed slightly. "Sir, I can't show you security footage without proper authorization. If you're concerned about your child's safety, you need to speak with hospital administration or file a police report. But I can't just pull up video because of a confusing conversation." He was right, of course. I had no grounds for this request. No evidence of anything except a strange comment that Eleanor would deny if confronted. I thanked him and left, feeling foolish and paranoid and completely out of my depth. But I couldn't let it go. Eleanor's words kept echoing in my mind. "That's not your child. Your real mother wouldn't have wanted you. She threw you away like garbage." And then her warning in the hallway. "Some things are better left buried." The implication was clear. There was something about Grace's birth, about her origins, that Eleanor knew, and I didn't. Something she was desperate to keep hidden. I thought about the pregnancy again, about how involved Eleanor had been. Too involved, maybe. She'd been at every ultrasound, every checkup. She'd taken Natalie to appointments when I was at work, always returning with detailed reports and doctor's instructions. Had she been controlling information? Keeping secrets? The next morning, I called Natalie's obstetrician. Dr. Amanda Pierce had delivered Grace and had cared for Natalie throughout the pregnancy. When I explained who I was, her tone became cautious. "Is everything all right with Natalie and the baby?" she asked. "They're fine," I assured her. "But I have some questions about the pregnancy, about things that might not have been shared with me." There was a pause. "Mr. Hastings, I can't discuss your wife's medical information without her consent. Privacy laws are very strict." I'd expected this. I understand. But hypothetically, if there were something unusual about the pregnancy, something that Natalie's mother knew about but I didn't, would you be obligated to tell me? Another pause. Longer this time. That would depend on what kind of information we're discussing and what your wife had authorized us to share. Mr. Hastings, is there something specific you're concerned about? I thought about how to phrase it without sounding crazy. When Grace was born, someone suggested that she might not be genetically mine. I need to know if there's any medical basis for that claim. Dr. Pierce's voice became very professional. Mr. Hastings, I would strongly suggest you have this conversation with your wife directly. If you have questions about paternity, there are tests available, but this is really a matter between you and Natalie. She wasn't going to help me. She couldn't, legally. I thanked her and hung up, no closer to answers. Natalie was released from the hospital 2 days later. I drove her and Grace home in careful silence, acutely aware of every bump in the road, every sharp turn. Eleanor had texted Natalie multiple times, saying she wanted to come over and help with the baby, but Natalie had put her off. I just want it to be us for a few days, she said, looking at Grace in her car seat. Just our little family. Is that okay? I squeezed her hand. More than okay. Perfect. I meant it. I needed time with Natalie alone, time to figure out how to ask her about Eleanor's words without destroying everything. But as we pulled into our driveway, I saw Eleanor's silver Mercedes already parked on the street. She was waiting on our front porch, holding a casserole dish and wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Surprise! She called out as we approached. I knew you'd be exhausted, so I brought dinner, and I'm here to help however you need. Natalie's face fell. Mom, I told you we wanted some alone time. Eleanor waved this away. Don't be silly. You need your mother right now. First-time parents always do. Besides, we have so much to discuss. She looked directly at me when she said this last part, and I felt a chill run down my spine. She was here to manage the situation, to control the narrative, to make sure I didn't start asking questions she didn't want to answer. We couldn't exactly turn her away, not without causing a scene that would upset Natalie. So I unlocked the door, and we all went inside, Eleanor taking charge immediately. She had Natalie installed on the couch with pillows and blankets, had the casserole warming in the oven, had unpacked the diaper bag, and organized the baby supplies, all within 15 minutes. It was impressive and suffocating. Every time I tried to get Natalie alone, Eleanor appeared with another task, another need, another reason for Natalie to stay right where she was under Eleanor's watchful eye. Finally, when Grace needed to be fed and Natalie went to the nursery we'd set up in the spare bedroom, I followed her. Eleanor started to come too, but I closed the door firmly in her face. Give us a minute, I said. I heard her make an irritated sound, but she didn't try to come in. Natalie settled into the rocking chair, adjusting her nursing pillow and wincing as she positioned Grace. Is everything okay? She asked, noticing my tension. I knelt beside the chair, trying to figure out how to start this conversation. Natalie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Her eyes widened. You're scaring me. What's wrong? I took a deep breath. At the hospital in the nursery, I heard your mother say something strange. She was holding Grace, and she said, "That's not your child." She said something about Grace's real mother throwing her away. I watched Natalie's face carefully, looking for recognition, confusion, anything that would give me a clue about what was happening. What I saw was fear, pure, undiluted fear. Natalie's hands started shaking, and Grace began to fuss, sensing her mother's distress. What exactly did she say? Natalie's voice was barely a whisper. I repeated Eleanor's words as precisely as I could remember them. With each sentence, Natalie got paler, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. Natalie, what's going on? What does your mother know that I don't? She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Grace was crying too, confused and hungry, and Natalie tried to soothe her while falling apart herself. I thought she'd keep her promise, Natalie said finally. She swore she wouldn't tell anyone. She swore. My heart was hammering. Tell anyone what? Natalie looked up at me, and in her eyes I saw everything ending. Our marriage, our family, our future, all of it crumbling in real time. Grace isn't biologically ours, she said. Neither of ours. She's adopted. The word hung in the air between us. Adopted. But we hadn't adopted a baby. We'd been pregnant. I'd seen the positive tests, the ultrasounds, the growing belly. I'd felt the baby kick. That's impossible, I said. You were pregnant. I was there through all of it. Natalie shook her head, still crying. No, I was never pregnant. It was all fake. The room spun. I grabbed the arm of the rocking chair to steady myself. What do you mean fake? How do you fake a pregnancy for 9 months? Natalie couldn't look at me. She stared down at Grace, who had finally latched on and was nursing contentedly, oblivious to the bomb her mother had just dropped. My mother planned everything. She found a pregnant woman who wanted to give up her baby. Someone young, someone desperate. Mom paid her to stay in a facility during the pregnancy, to get proper prenatal care, to make sure the baby would be healthy. And she paid me to pretend I was the one who was pregnant. I couldn't process what I was hearing. Paid you? Your own mother paid you to lie to your husband? It wasn't supposed to be a lie, Natalie said desperately. It was supposed to be a solution. Andrew, I can't have children. I found out 3 years ago. My uterus is malformed. There's scar tissue from a surgery I had as a teenager. Multiple doctors confirmed it would be impossible for me to carry a pregnancy to term. I was devastated. I wanted to tell you, but my mother said it would ruin everything. She said you'd leave me if you knew I couldn't give you children. I started to protest, but she kept talking, words spilling out in a rush. Mom said she'd fix it. She had connections, knew people who handled private adoptions. She said we could do it this way, make it look natural, and no one would ever have to know. You'd get to be a father, I'd get to be a mother, and we'd have our family. But I didn't get a choice, I said, and my voice came out harder than I intended. You and your mother made this decision without me. You lied to me for 9 months. You let me believe I was going to be a biological father when you knew it wasn't true. Natalie flinched like I'd hit her. I know it was wrong. But I was so scared of losing you, and Mom was so convincing. She made it sound like this was the only way. I stood up, needing distance, needing air. The morning sickness, the hospital stays, the ultrasounds, all of it was theater. Natalie nodded miserably. Mom had a friend who's an obstetrician, not your regular doctor, someone in another city who ran a private practice. She'd see me for the official appointments, create fake ultrasound images using pictures from the real pregnancy. Mom would take me there, and I'd get the documentation to show you. The morning sickness was induced. Mom gave me something to make me throw up, to make it look real. And the hospital stays were real, but they weren't for pregnancy complications. I was having panic attacks from the stress of lying to you, from the guilt. But Mom told the doctors it was pregnancy-related, and they believed her because she's so convincing. I thought about all those mornings I'd held Natalie while she vomited. All those nights I'd stayed awake worrying about her health, about the baby's health, all of it based on lies. And the C-section, the emergency delivery? My voice was hollow. That was real, Natalie said quickly. The biological mother went into labor early. We had to act fast. Mom arranged for me to be admitted to the hospital under the pretense of pregnancy complications. They gave me medication to simulate labor symptoms, and then the biological mother delivered in a private room. As soon as Grace was born, they brought her to me in recovery, made it look like I'd just given birth. The level of deception was staggering. The planning, the coordination, the number of people who must have been involved. Who else knows? I demanded. Just Mom and the people she paid, doctors, nurses, a lawyer who handled the adoption paperwork. They all signed non-disclosure agreements. Eleanor had orchestrated an entire conspiracy, manipulating medical professionals, legal systems, and her own daughter, all to maintain an illusion. And the biological mother? What happened to her? Natalie's expression became guarded. I don't know. Mom handled everything with her. She said it was better if I didn't know details, that it would be cleaner legally. The woman signed away all parental rights, took her payment, and disappeared. Something about the way Natalie said this made my skin crawl. How much? I asked. How much did your mother pay her? Natalie hesitated. I don't know exactly. Mom wouldn't tell me. But it was a lot. Enough for the woman to start a new life somewhere else. I started pacing, trying to organize my thoughts into something coherent. Natalie, what your mother did, what you did, this is fraud. This is illegal. You falsified medical records, lied to insurance companies, faked a pregnancy. Do you understand the magnitude of what you're telling me? She was sobbing now, harsh sounds that shook her whole body. I know it's wrong. But what was I supposed to do? Tell you I'm broken? That I can't give you the family you wanted? Yes, I shouted, and Grace startled in her arms, beginning to cry again. I lowered my voice. But the anger was still there, vibrating through every word. Yes, you were supposed to tell me. You were supposed to trust me enough to be honest. We could have discussed adoption openly. We could have made decisions together like adults, like partners. Instead, you let your mother manipulate both of us into this nightmare. Natalie stood up, bouncing Grace gently, trying to calm her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times. But the further we got, the harder it became. And Mom kept saying it would all be worth it once the baby was here. That you'd be so happy you wouldn't care how it happened. There was a knock on the nursery door. Eleanor's voice came through, sweet and concerned. Is everything all right in there? I heard shouting. I yanked the door open. Eleanor stood there, looking maternal and worried. But I saw the truth behind the mask now. Saw the calculation, the control, the complete lack of remorse. You need to leave, I said. Now. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. Andrew, I know you're under a lot of stress, but I'm not leaving my daughter when she clearly needs me. She tried to look past me to where Natalie stood with Grace, but I blocked her view. Your daughter just told me everything. About the fake pregnancy, about the adoption, about all of it. So you need to leave before I call the police. Eleanor's mask cracked. Her face went hard, her eyes turning cold. You won't call the police, because if you do, if you expose this, Grace will be taken away. The adoption wasn't legal. The biological mother was paid, which violates adoption laws. If this comes out, you'll lose your daughter. So no, Andrew, I don't think I'll be leaving. She was holding Grace hostage, using my love for a child I'd known for 3 days against me. I wanted to hit her, wanted to scream, but she was right. If I reported this, if I exposed the fraud, Grace would be caught in the middle. She'd be removed from our home, placed in foster care while investigations unfolded, potentially returned to a biological mother who might not want her back. Get out of my house, I said quietly. And if you ever come near my daughter again, legal adoption or not, I will make sure everyone knows what you've done. Every friend at your country club, every person at your charity events, every member of your social circle. I'll destroy your reputation so thoroughly that you'll wish the police were your only problem." Eleanor stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, and it was chilling. "You're making a mistake, Andrew. You need me. Without my protection, without my resources, this whole thing falls apart. That biological mother, she could change her mind, come looking for her baby. Without the legal framework I've established, you have no claim to Grace at all." She was threatening me, standing in my home, threatening to help the biological mother reclaim the child she'd given up. "I'll take my chances," I said. "Leave. Now." Eleanor looked past me one more time, her gaze landing on Natalie. "You're going to regret this, darling. Both of you. You have no idea what I've protected you from." Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I heard the front door open and close, heard her car start and pull away. Only then did I let myself breathe. I turned back to Natalie, who was sitting in the rocking chair again, holding Grace close and crying silently. "What did she mean?" I asked. "What has she protected us from?" Natalie wouldn't look at me. "Andrew, please. Can we just focus on us right now, on figuring out what we're going to do?" But I couldn't. Eleanor's parting words had lodged in my brain, another piece of a puzzle I was only beginning to see. "Tell me about the biological mother, everything you know." Natalie took a shaky breath. "I only met her once. Mom brought her to the house about 6 months into the fake pregnancy. She wanted me to see her, to know that this was real, that there was actually a baby coming. The woman was young, maybe 19 or 20. She was very pregnant, obviously. Mom introduced her as Lily. I don't know if that was her real name." "What did she say? Did she seem willing? Comfortable with giving up the baby?" Natalie thought about this. She seemed scared, really scared. She barely spoke, just nodded at everything Mom said. Mom had her sit down, explained that she was being well cared for, that after the birth she'd receive her payment and be free to start over. Lily just kept nodding. When I tried to talk to her directly, to ask if she was okay, Mom cut me off, said it was better not to get too personal, that emotional attachment would complicate things. The description made me uneasy. Did she look like she wanted to be there? Natalie's silence was answer enough. "Natalie, did it ever occur to you that this woman might not have had a choice? That your mother might have coerced her somehow?" Natalie's face crumpled. I tried not to think about it. I told myself that Mom was helping her, that this was good for everyone. But yes, I wondered, especially near the end, when Mom stopped letting me ask questions about Lily at all. When I'd bring her up, Mom would change the subject or say it was handled. I felt sick. "We need to find her. We need to know that she actually wanted to give up this baby and wasn't forced." Natalie shook her head frantically. "We can't. Mom made sure of that. Everything was done through intermediaries. No records with real names. Lily was kept in a facility somewhere. Mom wouldn't tell me where. After Grace was born, Lily vanished. I have no way to find her. Your mother does," I said. "She knows exactly where Lily is and how to reach her." I grabbed my phone. "And she's going to tell me, or I'm going to make good on that threat to expose her." I called Eleanor. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been expecting it. "Changed your mind already?" she asked. "I need Lily's information. Full name, last known address, contact details, everything you have on her." Eleanor laughed. "Absolutely not. That woman signed a contract. She has no claim to Grace, and you have no need to contact her." I kept my voice level. "Eleanor, if you don't give me that information in the next 24 hours, I'm going to the police. I'll report everything. Yes, we'll probably lose Grace, but you'll go to prison for fraud, for illegal adoption practices, for whatever other charges they can pile on. Your choice." The line went quiet. When Eleanor spoke again, her voice was ice. "You don't want to know about Lily, Andrew. Trust me on this. Some doors are better left closed." It was the second time she'd said something like that, warning me away from the truth, which made me more determined to find it. 24 hours, I repeated and hung up. Natalie was staring at me. "What are you going to do?" I sat down on the floor, suddenly exhausted. "I'm going to find Lily, and I'm going to make sure she actually wanted to give up her baby. Because if she didn't, if your mother coerced her or forced her somehow, then this isn't just fraud. It's kidnapping." The next morning, I started my own investigation. I called a lawyer first, explaining the situation without using names, asking what my legal options were. The lawyer was blunt. "If the adoption was illegal, which it sounds like it was, you're in serious trouble. The best thing you can do is come forward voluntarily, cooperate with authorities, and hope for leniency. The child will likely be removed from your home during the investigation." I thanked him and hung up, my stomach churning. I couldn't let Grace be taken away, but I also couldn't live with the possibility that she'd been stolen from a mother who wanted her. I hired a private investigator next, a woman named Judith Reeves, who specialized in adoption cases. I met her at a coffee shop while Natalie stayed home with Grace. "This is messy," Judith said after I explained everything. "Private adoptions are legal if done correctly, but what you're describing sounds like baby trafficking. The payment to the biological mother, the falsified medical records, the secret facility, none of that is standard practice." She made notes on her tablet. Your mother-in-law would have needed help. Doctors willing to break the law, a facility willing to house a pregnant woman off the books, lawyers who could create false documentation. That takes money and connections. I thought about Eleanor's social circle, about the powerful people she knew, judges, hospital administrators, businessmen. She had the resources to pull this off. Can you find Lily? I asked. I can try. But if your mother-in-law is as careful as you say, she'll have covered her tracks well. We might not be able to locate her. Judith looked at me seriously. Mr. Hastings, I need to ask. If we find this woman and she wants her baby back, what are you going to do? I'd been asking myself the same question for hours. What would I do if Lily appeared at my door asking for her daughter? Could I give up Grace? Could I keep her knowing her mother wanted her back? I don't know, I admitted. But I need to know the truth first. Whatever happens after that, we'll deal with it. Judith started her investigation that afternoon. While she worked, I stayed home with Natalie and Grace, both of us moving through our house like ghosts. We didn't talk about Eleanor, didn't talk about what might happen. We just focused on Grace, on feeding her and changing her and holding her, trying to memorize every detail in case it all fell apart. Eleanor called repeatedly, but I didn't answer. She showed up at the house once, but I didn't let her in. She stood on the porch screaming about her rights as a grandmother, about how ungrateful we were, about everything she'd done for us. Neighbors were staring. I called the police and she left before they arrived. 3 days after I hired Judith, she called me. I found something. Can you meet me? I drove to her office in a daze. Judith had papers spread across her desk, her face grim. Your mother-in-law made a mistake, she said. She used a facility called Meadowbrook Women's Center for the pregnancy. It's a private hospital upstate that specializes in high-risk pregnancies and supposedly confidential deliveries for women in difficult situations. But they've been investigated before for ethical violations. I called posing as a family member looking for my sister, described Lily based on your wife's description, and the staff got nervous. They wouldn't confirm anything officially, but their reaction told me I was in the right place. She showed me documents she'd obtained through connections I didn't ask about. Lily Brennan, age 19 at the time of delivery, no listed address, no emergency contacts. The file notes that she was a resident patient, meaning she lived there during the pregnancy. And here's where it gets interesting. Her file was flagged with a code that indicates she was there under some kind of legal guardianship, like she wasn't making her own medical decisions. My hands were shaking as I read. What does that mean? Was she a minor? Judith shook her head. She was 19, legally an adult, but guardianship can be assigned in cases where someone is deemed unable to make decisions for themselves. Mental illness, intellectual disability, that kind of thing. Or, she paused, in cases where someone has been coerced into accepting legal control. You think Eleanor had guardianship over her? It seemed impossible. But then again, everything about this situation was impossible. I think Eleanor found a vulnerable young woman and used the legal system to control her. If Lily agreed to guardianship, either because she didn't understand what she was signing or because she was promised something in return, then Eleanor would have had complete authority over her medical care, her living situation, and her baby. Judith pulled out another document. I also found this, a police report filed 6 months ago, 3 months after Grace was born. A young woman matching Lily's description reported being held against her will at a private facility during her pregnancy. She claimed she'd been promised money and support, but after the baby was born, she was given a fraction of what she'd been promised and was threatened to keep quiet. My heart stopped. Did she say what facility? Judith nodded. Meadowbrook. But here's the problem. The report was filed, but then withdrawn 2 days later. The woman came back and said she'd been mistaken, that she'd been confused, that everything was fine. The case was closed. Someone had gotten to her. Eleanor, or one of her people. They'd convinced Lily to retract her statement, probably with more threats or maybe a bigger payoff. Where is she now? I asked. That's what took me so long to track down. After she withdrew the report, Lily Brennan disappeared. No address, no phone number, no social media presence. It's like she doesn't exist anymore. Judith leaned back in her chair. Mr. Hastings, I think your mother-in-law paid Lily to disappear, to make sure she could never come back and cause problems. I felt like I was drowning. So what do I do? If I can't find Lily, if I can't prove she was coerced, then what? Judith gathered her papers. You have 2 options. 1, you do nothing. You keep Grace, pretend this conversation never happened, and hope Lily never resurfaces. Or 2, you go to the police with everything you know. They'll investigate Meadowbrook, track down Lily, and uncover the truth. But that means Grace goes into the system while this gets sorted out, and there's no guarantee you'll get her back. Both options were terrible. Both meant losing something. I thought about Grace, about her tiny fingers and the way she looked at me like I was her whole world. I thought about Lily, 19 and alone, and possibly a victim. I thought about Natalie, caught between her mother's manipulation and her own desperation for a child. I went home and told Natalie everything Judith had found. She listened in silence, her face getting paler with each revelation. When I finished, she stood up and walked to Grace's nursery. I followed her. She was standing over the crib, looking down at our sleeping daughter. I knew, she said quietly. Not all of it, but I knew something was wrong. The way Mom talked about Lily, like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person. The way she made sure I never learned anything real about her. I knew, and I let it happen anyway because I wanted this so badly. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. What kind of person does that make me? I didn't have an answer. We stood there in the dark nursery, the sound of Grace's breathing the only noise in the house. Finally, Natalie spoke again. We have to find her. We have to find Lily and make this right. I nodded. We couldn't keep Grace if it meant destroying someone else's life. No matter how much it hurt, we had to do the right thing. I called Judith back. I need you to find Lily Brennan, whatever it takes, and then I need you to help me make sure she gets her daughter back if she wants her. Judith was quiet for a moment. That's going to be expensive and complicated, and there's no guarantee we'll find her. I didn't care. Do it anyway. It took 2 more weeks. 2 weeks of living in limbo, bonding with a baby who might be taken away, watching Natalie spiral into depression and guilt. Eleanor kept trying to contact us, her messages escalating from concerned to angry to threatening. She knew we were digging, and she was scared. Finally, Judith called. I found her. Lily Brennan is living in a women's shelter in Philadelphia. She's working part-time at a grocery store trying to save money. And Mr. Hastings, she's been looking for her daughter. She never wanted to give her up. My world tilted. What do you mean? Judith's voice was gentle. Lily told me everything. Your mother-in-law found her when she was 18 and pregnant from a rape. She was homeless, terrified, with no family support. Eleanor promised her a safe place to stay, medical care, and $50,000 after the delivery. Lily agreed because she had no other options. But once Lily was at Meadowbrook, Eleanor changed the terms. She forced Lily to sign guardianship papers, saying it was necessary for the adoption. Then she kept Lily isolated, monitored her calls, controlled her access to information. After Grace was born, Eleanor gave Lily $10,000 instead of $50,000. When Lily protested, Eleanor threatened to report her for fraud, said no one would believe her story, that she'd go to prison for trying to scam money. Lily was so scared she took the $10,000 and ran. I felt rage building in my chest. She's been looking for Grace? Judith confirmed. She went to the police, but retracted the report after Eleanor's people found her. They told her that the baby was in a good home, that fighting this would only hurt everyone, including the child. They offered her more money to disappear and stay quiet. Lily took it because she needed to survive, but she never stopped thinking about her daughter. I showed Lily the photo you gave me of Grace. She recognized her immediately, started crying. She wants to know if Grace is okay, if she's loved, if she's healthy. My throat was tight. Grace is perfect. We love her more than anything. Judith paused. Mr. Hastings, Lily isn't asking for Grace back. She knows Grace is bonded with you and your wife. She knows taking her away would be traumatic. What she wants is to press charges against your mother-in-law, to make sure Eleanor can't do this to anyone else. And she wants to know that Grace is safe and happy. I closed my eyes. Can we meet her? Natalie and I? We need to tell her we're sorry. We need to make this right. The meeting was arranged for 3 days later at Judith's office. Natalie was a wreck, barely sleeping, barely eating. I wasn't much better. We left Grace with my parents, who knew something was wrong but didn't ask questions. Lily Brennan was younger than her years suggested, her face marked by hardship, but her eyes clear and determined. She looked at us with a mixture of fear and hope. I didn't know, Natalie said immediately. I swear I didn't know what my mother had done to you. I thought you wanted this. I thought you were being helped. Lily's voice was soft but steady. I believed that at first too, but your mother is very good at making you believe what she wants you to believe. I was young and scared and stupid. You weren't stupid, I said firmly. You were victimized. By my mother-in-law and by everyone who helped her. Lily pulled out a folder, her hands shaking slightly. I want to go to the police. I want to file charges. But I wanted to meet you first, to make sure Grace is really okay. That's all I need to know, that she's loved and safe. Natalie was crying. She's so loved, more than you can imagine. We wake up every morning amazed that she's ours. She stopped. Except she's not ours, is she? She's yours. Lily shook her head. She stopped being mine the day she was born, and I couldn't hold her. Your mother made sure of that, but she doesn't have to stop being yours just because I want justice. What are you saying? I asked. Lily looked at both of us. I'm saying that if you're willing to fight for her, if you're willing to go through the legal process of a legitimate adoption, I'll sign whatever papers are necessary. But only after Eleanor Hastings is held accountable for what she did. To me, and probably to other women. Because I can't be the only one she's done this to. Judith spoke up. If we go to the authorities with everything we have, Eleanor will be investigated. The fertility clinic, Meadowbrook, anyone involved in the scheme. It's going to be a massive case, and it's going to expose your part in it, she said to Natalie. You'll face legal consequences for the fraud. Natalie nodded. I know. I'm ready. I should have stopped this from the beginning. I should have stood up to my mother. She looked at Lily. I'm so sorry. For everything you went through. For being part of it. Even unknowingly. Lily reached across the table and took Natalie's hand. You were a victim too. Just in a different way. Your mother manipulates people. That's what she does. But we can stop her together. We went to the police that afternoon. All of us. We walked into the district attorney's office and told them everything. Gave them documents, recordings, testimonies. Watched as their expressions changed from skeptical to horrified to determined. They opened an investigation immediately. Eleanor was arrested a week later at her country club during a charity luncheon. The photos of her in handcuffs being led out past her shocked friends made every local news outlet. The scandal was enormous. Meadowbrook Women's Center was raided. Documents were seized. Other women came forward. Women who'd been coerced into giving up their babies. Women who'd been promised one thing and given another. Eleanor's network of corruption unraveled. Doctors lost licenses. Lawyers were disbarred. The adoption facilitator who'd connected desperate women with wealthy couples looking for babies was facing decades in prison. Eleanor's trial lasted 3 months. Natalie testified against her own mother, describing the fake pregnancy, the lies, the manipulation. I testified about what I'd heard in the hospital nursery, about Eleanor's threats and attempts at control. Lily testified about her experience, about being trapped and scared and forced to give up her child. The jury found Eleanor guilty on 17 counts, including fraud, illegal adoption practices, kidnapping, and racketeering. She was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. She showed no remorse at sentencing, insisting she'd only been trying to help families. The judge called her a predator who'd exploited vulnerable women for profit and control. Natalie and I worked with a legitimate adoption attorney after that. Lily signed the papers willingly this time, with full legal representation and no coercion. The adoption was legal and open. Lily visits every few months, always supervised but warm. Grace knows her as Aunt Lily for now. When she's older, we'll tell her the truth about where she came from and everything that happened. But for now, she's just a little girl who's loved by more people than most kids could hope for. Natalie went through therapy, processing the damage her mother had done, learning to recognize manipulation and control. She's stronger now, more confident in her own judgment. Our marriage survived, though it took work. Trust had been broken, and rebuilding it was slow and painful. But we made it through because we were both committed to doing better, to being better, to giving Grace the honest, healthy family she deserved. Eleanor writes letters from prison sometimes, still trying to justify what she did, still insisting she was helping. We don't respond. Grace is 3 now and asks questions about everything, like all toddlers do. One day she'll ask about her grandmother in prison, about Aunt Lily, who looks at her with sad eyes, about how she came to be ours. And we'll tell her the truth, the whole messy, complicated truth, because she deserves that. She deserves better than the lies that brought her to us. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.